What's up, everybody? It's Man of Low Moral Fiber here. My name's Luke, and today we're going to be taking a second look at the Storm as a part of my Does It Suck series. Like many other weapons, this pearlescent sniper rifle got a significant boost as a part of the community patch. It is only available in Shock Element. If we take a look at it here in the unpatched version of the game, we can see that compared to a sniper, it has a slightly higher base damage with a lower fire rate and a higher chance to cause electric damage over time. If we shoot this weapon, you can see that it creates a number of different shock orbs. I believe that number is 5. They get randomly placed a certain radius from the original shot. And unlike the Pimpernel, this is a randomized pattern, so you can't really plan for it like you can the Pimpernel. You have to just kind of hope that the shock orbs are going to go where you want them. If we shoot this weapon at the bad guy here, looks like we have 1 stack of critical ascension. We'll see how much damage it does. Get rid of the 1 shot 1 kill bonus there. 33,000, so that's not that bad. Let's take a look at what the Sniper will do. You can see that the Sniper does a little bit more damage, and that's because some of this weapon's damage is relegated to the extra orbs that come about. And you can see that even when I shoot this guy right here, right next to him, sometimes only 1 orb attacks him, sometimes it's 2, but seldom will it actually be all 5. So that time we got 2 there. And you can see that the extra damage it does isn't super significant. 78k was the highest number I saw there, and some 57ks as well. So not super powerful there, and that's why this weapon was a little bit underwhelming in the unpatched version of the game. I was hoping this weapon would be strong enough where I could just shoot it here, or not really at the guy, and it would strip his shield and maybe some of his allies' shields as well if we were in a combat scenario. However, in testing the weapon in the unpatched version of the game, I didn't really find that it was able to do that commonly. So let's quit out here and apply the patch, and then test the patched version of the weapon and see if it's any better. So I'll apply the patch here, and then we'll go into the game and see if the patch is fully applied by checking out a vending machine. You'll notice right away that the Storm did get a different skin there, so that's pretty cool. Just right away it looks cooler, if I actually have it there. We can see that it definitely looks cooler, and the base damage is significantly higher. It no longer has that fire rate penalty, having the same fire rate now as a Sniper. Even though the Sniper got a boost in damage because of the the gemstone buff and it being an aquamarine Sniper, the Barking Storm also got a damage boost as well. I have the same accessory on this, which is the base damage accessory. You can also see that the shock damage over time got a significant increase, and the electrocute chances stayed the same. The Sniper now has a slightly higher magazine size because of the boost to gemstone weapons. Let's go take a look at the amount of damage this weapon is doing now. And we'll also verify that the patch is fully applied by buying sniper ammo here at this little vending machine in Marcus's area. So we click on this once, filled our ammo all the way up, we know that the patch is fully applied. Now if we shoot this guy in the head, it does a significant amount more damage. And all of the damage over time is significantly increased as well. I don't know if it's really happening, but it appears that more shock orbs are actually hitting him. Maybe not if I don't actually shoot him. Some of the shock orbs aren't going to get him, kind of like it was before. So my bad on that part there, but it does look like when they do hit him, that they're doing significantly more damage than they were before. I believe that the orb damage was buffed from 10% to 30%, so that's a significant increase as far as the orb damage goes, especially since the base damage on this weapon was increased as well. Let's head on over to the Washburn Refinery and see if it's going to do any more for us. Might have had the 1 shot 1 kill bonus when I tested that weapon there, but I promise it does a lot more. So, we'll go to the Washburn Refinery now and see how this weapon does, stripping shields on some of these enemies. Alright. So, this guy got, real low on health just because of the kunai and slag, but, he died pretty quickly. Let's see how it does against some of these guys here. So, these guys are close together. We'll see if we're able to share damage between them. Just the base damage boost on this weapon has significantly changed its effectiveness right away. On this guy, I'm not able to hit critical hits yet because he's holding his shield in the way, but you could see that the shock damage over time was doing a little bit of damage to him. One thing I will say about this weapon is that there are not that many enemies with shields in the game. So you'll probably want to be using a fire or corrosive rifle, depending on the map that you're in, most of the time over a shock rifle. I don't know where the rest of the enemies are in this room. There are usually more enemies than that. Maybe once we kill this exploder, more stuff will start happening. Sounds like that is the case. So this should one-hit this guy's shield, and it definitely seemed to do that. So that's pretty cool there. Now what I'm kind of hoping for this weapon is that after its buff, it is at least an effective anti-stalker weapon, which is what I hoped the weapon would be prior to the community patch, but really wasn't. Because stalkers would move around and their shields would not really get depleted by this weapon because of the low base damage and the low damage of the orbs. I wouldn't say the low base damage, I would just say the low damage of the orbs. Now that the orbs are 3 times as powerful, plus the base damage increase to the weapon, the orbs should be able to, hopefully strip some stalker shields. I haven't tested that yet, but we will go test that after we run through the Washburn Refinery here. Assuming I don't get caught on the architecture and get stuck. So, oh well. We'll move down to this big badass loader here. Now this is an enemy that we would ordinarily be able to one-hit with a corrosive rifle that is this powerful, but with a shock rifle we do lose the elemental bonus. Plus, I threw my deception in a weird place, and he wasn't looking at us, so we weren't able to get that critical hit. But you can see, even with it being a shock weapon as opposed to a corrosive weapon, that this is a strong enough weapon to dispatch enemies very, very quickly. So that's pretty cool there. I'd imagine this weapon would also be great on Maya with chain reaction, and probably Gage with her electric tree as well. So we could test it on those characters, but in this video we're going to be sticking to 0. So you can see that, it is killing these enemies pretty quickly, even with a low amount of critical ascension. The base damage on this weapon is high enough now that if you have any amount of critical ascension, this is going to be a pretty powerful weapon. And the shock damage over time is definitely better than it was. It's still not game-changing. It doesn't seem to be. At least against these enemies. Like I said, shields are a little bit uncommon in Borderlands 2. Most enemies do not have them, for the most part. There are areas where a lot of enemies have them, such as stalker areas, for example, but for the most part, they're not that common. Perhaps I'm killing these enemies too quickly with the slagging rifle there, and I maybe should just bring in a level 1 slag rifle for this particular type of video. Oh well. You can see that when it's close to an enemy that is against a wall, the orbs are perhaps a little bit more effective. We have 2 enemies here that both have shields. Let's see if we can strip it from both of them. Probably didn't strip that shield from the guy behind, but it definitely did some damage to his shield, which is nice. And I guess shock could be a good element if you were in an area where there were a mix of loaders and, like Hyperion personnel that are weak to fire. So that could be one of the situations where this weapon would be pretty good. A lot of those Hyperion personnel do have shields, especially some of the ones that disappear and are a little bit more difficult to deal with. We'll take out this guy here. We can see that it did one-hit him, so that's pretty cool there. In Deception, with the one-shot, one-kill bonus and a decent amount of critical ascension, you can definitely one-shot super badass loaders. So that's pretty cool there. If the sniper rifle couldn't do that, that would be a little bit discouraging. But it does do that, so that's nice. We can also see that it rips through guys without slag decently quickly, even though it's not a corrosive weapon. It does seem that the shock damage over time is helping us here, which is very nice. It blew up that slag barrel, so that's a bonus. This weapon can be used to blow up barrels even if you don't hit super close to them, it appears. So that's pretty cool. Barrels are some of the more dangerous enemies at overpower level 8, or really any power level or difficulty in the game. The barrels are, I don't know, not my favorite feature of this game. But, not a terrible deal. If you have a weapon that can take them out, that's good stuff. Perhaps my aversion to barrels has to do with me playing Melee Zero, and the Novas on particular Melee Zero shields, like the Height of Terramorphous and Love Thumper, have caused problems for barrels and myself, or for myself regarding barrels in the past. We'll go ahead and get some health back here, being a little stupid and not killing enemies instead of, killing them. I was just kind of watching the shock damage over time there just for kicks and giggles, but you can see that even on an unslagged enemy, this weapon was able to get me a second win pretty quickly. We'll move forward here, kill this hot loader. You can see that with the one-shot, one-kill bonus and a slagged enemy at this amount of critical ascension, we're going to wreck them. So that's pretty cool. Take out that guy as well. Yeah, this weapon definitely does not suck. I wouldn't say that the weapon sucked before, just that it was super underwhelming and it didn't really have a practical use. If you were trying to strip shields, there were other weapons or grenades that you could use that did it a little bit better. This might actually be an effective weapon for Sniper Zero against stalkers and other shielded enemies now. I don't know if I would personally carry it over a Shock Pimpernel, because I think a Shock Pimpernel is still going to have a little bit higher damage output than this weapon is, but you can see how the damage over time killed that guy, so that's pretty cool. I believe damage over time also got a significant boost as a part of the community patch, so that's only going to work in this weapon's favor as well. Nice, blowing up those dudes with one shot. That's pretty cool. I guess technically it was 2 shots because I had to slack them, but regardless. I would prefer this weapon to actually have a fixed spread where each of these went out a specific angle from the weapon so that you could kind of plan for it and use it a little bit, I don't know what the word would be, purposefully. You could use it a little more tactically instead of having to rely on the RNG to give you a good orb spread. Regardless, the orbs are much more powerful now, and so even if they're not going exactly where you want them to go, they should be more beneficial to you. Let's go in here, deal with Hurley and the 2 super badass loaders, not necessarily in that order, but actually the opposite of that order, and then we'll see what we can do after that. Like I said, I'm probably going to take this weapon to the Wildlife Preserve or somewhere else where we can look at how it does against some stalkers, because I think that's where this weapon truly has a chance to shine, and where its optimal use scenario would be. Like I said, in a lot of areas, I'm still going to prefer the Shock Pimp, but that's because the Pimpernel is so very strong. In some other situations, I would probably prefer the Shock Lyuda as well, but again, that is another top tier weapon. And this weapon probably does have a few situations where it is the optimal weapon to use, but I believe that the Lyuda or the Pimpernel are going to be a little bit more consistent. However, this weapon is obviously very, very strong at this point, so couldn't fault anybody for using this weapon. If you like using this weapon, it's definitely good to use now. Before, it was definitely underwhelming, but now it seems to be pretty nice. Cool bandit launcher there. There should be an enemy in here. There we go. Let him step out here so we can get another critical hit. Perfect. And we'll slag this guy and see if he also dies. Perfect. So yeah, this weapon is very, very powerful now. I don't know, it's not super useful in my opinion because, I wouldn't say it's not super useful. It's not as useful as I might imagine it or want it to be because so few enemies have shields. But for the enemies that do have shields, it's going to be a powerful weapon. Let's head on over towards the wildlife preservation and see if that's going to make it better. It's not really a wildlife preservation, but exploitation preservation, I think it is. So we'll try to look for that particular map, Wildlife Exploitation Preserve. I've always thought that was a pretty funny name. Animal abuse is not cool, though. I believe that all people who abuse animals have earned a hot spot in hell, and they're a bunch of fucking subhumans. Regardless, let's see how it does against these enemies here. I would like to have them grouped up, but this will give us a good idea as to how quickly it can strip a Rabid Stalker's shield. And so the Rabid Stalkers are going to have stronger shields than some of these other enemies, or other Stalkers, I would imagine. However, it stripped his shield pretty quickly, and it appears that it got rid of this Clash Stalker over here, even though he wasn't slagged. So that's pretty cool there. Probably going to need a Fire Pimp to take out this guy efficiently. Now that all of my grenades are gone, we're in a little bit of trouble, but we'll see if we can kill this Rabid Stalker with the Storm. So perhaps it's not that super strong, but it appears if there's an overhead like we got here, that's when it can really get a lot of damage from those shock orbs, because those orbs don't have as far to move or spread out, and they're likely to actually hit your enemies. So that's pretty cool. Because the Slag Pimp is so strong, if you actually aim the Slag Pimp in the right spot, you're going to you're going to take out their shields in one shot anyway. So that's another reason why shock is a little bit of an underwhelming element in Borderlands 2, but that definitely does not make this a bad weapon in the community patch version of the game. This is a very strong weapon. I want to experiment a little bit more against some of these stalkers here just to kind of get a feel for it. This is my first time playing with it in the patched version of the game. Cool. So this is a stalker here who has his shield, and it took his shield down pretty quickly. That's good stuff. He's a slagged stalker, apparently. He's in a hard spot for us to kill, and he's not coming down. If we just shoot him straight up, I don't think this weapon's going to deal that much damage to him. We'll need a critical hit. This would be one of the areas where if you had to choose, using a Pimpernel is going to be a lot better. Just for kicks, we'll put on a shock Pimpernel and see if it does anything better to him. So, that's what the Storm is doing. And if we switch on over to the Pimpernel, well, maybe if I hit a critical hit with the Storm, it would have done the same thing. Oops. We'll go forward. Definitely some more stalkers spawning down there. Another good way to strip the shield on stalkers is, shock grenades, but obviously on this character I'm almost always using a transfusion grenade. So, well, not on Melee Zero, then I'll use a Chain Lightning, but on Sniper Zero I'm always using a transfusion grenade. I guess I could use a shock transfusion as well, but you can see against stalkers this weapon is pretty good because they move around a bunch, they'll jump into some of your orbs. If you get good luck with where those orbs actually end up, you're going to rip through their shields pretty quickly, but also their health as well, even without hitting critical hits. So I would say that this is a very solid stalker weapon at this point, which is of note, because stalkers can be a difficult enemy for Sniper Zero. So if you have a Storm, this is one of the situations where you'll want to use it. And so that's pretty cool. I don't know technically whether or not it's going to be worth using over a Shock Pimpernel, but this isn't a bad option, even if the Shock Pimpernel is a better option. So you can see here I'm not even trying to aim for critical hits, and it's still taking out all of the enemies that aren't special variants like the Slag Stalker pretty easily. The Slag Stalker seems to be a little bit more resilient, perhaps because he's invulnerable to slag, and he also just might have a little bit higher health than normal anyway. Kunai takes him out, though. I think that's pretty much the end of the Stalkers. I'll move forward a little bit. In conclusion, though, the Storm not only looks badass now, it is pretty badass now. I wonder if it's any good against Rack. Probably not. The Rack are going to move so fast that the orbs aren't really going to have time to activate. But you can really see the random spread when we shoot an enemy in the air like that. The orbs just kind of spread out randomly. I would prefer it to come out in a, standardized star pattern every time. That would make me like this weapon a little bit more, just because it would make it a little bit less random. However, this is a very strong weapon at this point. We'll move to some of these Hyperion personnel here just because I mentioned that they can have shields earlier as well, and I want to see how it does against them. So this is a guy here. Nice! Tore him up pretty quickly. If we shoot one repair surveyor, it seemed to actually deal some damage to another repair surveyor. So perhaps in situations where you have surveyors sitting down on an enemy, this wouldn't be a terrible weapon to use because it will strip their shield pretty quickly. Cool. Even without slag and without a corrosive element, it can still take out surveyors, so that's pretty cool. If we shoot this guy back here, straight up in his head, it's going to kill him, and also deal damage to his nearby friends, so that's neat. Somehow survive that damage over time. We'll get a critical hit on that guy, and then we'll kind of wait for it to start dealing damage to this angelic loader as well. Oh, this is the guy with the dot, so we need to take him out. And even though it's not a corrosive weapon, looks like it was able to kill that guy with its damage over time. His damage over time also set me down for just a moment, but we were able to get back up. Looks like there is a exploder over here. That's not really a good test for this weapon, but it'll be the last enemy we kill here. So, pretty powerful weapon. It's definitely not as useful as, say, a shock pimp in my mind, but there are scenarios where this weapon will serve you very, very well. Beforehand, I thought that this weapon was underwhelming. Now I feel it has a pretty solid niche use, and that's going to be pretty good. Niche use, I guess, is the proper pronunciation. There are a lot of words that I learned from reading and not necessarily from hearing other people say them, so that's why I talk weird sometimes. I apologize for that. If you guys have any comments, go ahead, leave them below. I'll try to answer your questions and such. If you guys have any suggestions for the next weapon to do in the patched version of Does It Suck, just let me know. This was a very requested weapon, and I definitely think it's very, very cool now. The guys who made the community patch did a very good job. That's going to be Shadow Evil, Aduni, Black's Life, Angrier Pat, Zababu, Beat Boop Joe, Kobe, Empire Scum, Light Chaos Man, Sir Umanel, Hydradler, and some others as well. So all of those guys are pretty cool. I was just trying to read their online handles there. If I heard them pronounce them, perhaps I would have said them a little bit better. And I think that the width on the page I'm reading that off of is actually excluding a couple people. But big shout out to all those guys. They've done a great thing. Added more life to Borderlands 2, a game that I have a significant love for. So we'll continue testing weapons as a part of the Does It Suck series, but you can see that the Storm and, all of the other weapons that we tested so far have gotten significant improvements. This weapon definitely does not suck, but I wouldn't say it's the optimal weapon to use in very many scenarios. We'll see, though. Anywho, as always, guys, I thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. If you have any other, fuck. I hope to catch you next time. Bye, guys.